The first 24 hours inside hell. It starts with silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like the world stopped breathing. The moment that steel door shut behind me, I realized I wasn't entering a prison. I was entering a machine. A place where time didn't move, where walls watched you back. They call it ADX Florence, the world's toughest prison. To the outside world, it's just a complex in the Colorado desert. But to the men inside, it's something else entirely, a living entity that eats sound, hope, and memory. The arrival. The ride there was unlike any other transfer. No one spoke. The air inside the van was stale, thick with the smell of metal and sweat. We were handcuffed, shackled, and double-locked into seats that didn't move. No view. No sunlight. Just the hum of an engine and the constant echo of chains. When the doors opened, I stepped into another planet. The wind cut through my jumpsuit like knives. Around me, concrete, wire, and towers. Every corner of ADX Florence was built for control. Even the air vents were angled to prevent conversation. A guard whispered to me, voice flat. "Welcome to Florence. You won't like it here." They weren't wrong. After strip search, ID check, and psychological intake, I was led through Unit H, known among inmates as the tomb. You don't walk here, you're guided like cargo. Guards move in formation, two behind, one at your side, another watching from a mirrored station. Every door opens remotely with a metallic hiss, every sound amplified like a scream in a church. Then came the cell. 7 by 12 feet. Concrete bed, concrete desk, steel toilet. A 4-inch slit for a window, the only proof the outside world still existed. I touched the wall. It was cold. Always cold. The cell that eats you alive. People think prisons are about violence, gangs, shanks, and sometimes they are. But here, violence isn't physical. It's environmental. The isolation itself is the punishment. I was told I'd get 23 hours inside, 1 hour out, alone, in a cage they called the yard. But it wasn't a yard. It was a concrete box with a grate above it, barely showing a piece of the sky. No one explained the rules. You just learn, fast. You learn that the light never goes fully dark. You learn that guards talk through speakers, not faces. You learn that every sound, the buzz of a camera, the click of locks, becomes your heartbeat. And then you start to learn about the others. Men you'll never meet but always hear, whispers through vents, tapping on walls, coded knocks that become the language of ghosts. One night, I heard it. Tap. 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 3 short, 1 long. The Morse 4H. That was the start of my education in ADX. The neighbors. The man in the cell next to mine was said to be a terrorist, someone who once tried to bring down a building. He never spoke loud, but when he did, it was always in rhythm. Reciting prayers under his breath, counting seconds. Down the tier, another man screamed at invisible things. He'd been here longer than anyone could remember. Sometimes, you could smell the soap through the vents when someone showered, a reminder that life still existed. Other times, all you smelled was steel and disinfectant. We were all different kinds of monsters, but the walls didn't care who you were. Inside ADX, you're just a number, a sound, a presence to be managed. I used to think the hardest thing about prison was losing freedom. But here, it's losing identity. The routine of madness. Morning starts with a knock. Not a voice. A knock. Food slides through the metal slot, gray oatmeal, a plastic spoon, and silence. You eat. You wait. You exist. Every few days, you get recreation. They cuff you through the door slot, escort you down a narrow hallway, then lock you in another cage, a bigger one, under open sky. But there's no grass. No horizon. Just a rectangle of daylight filtered through steel. The first time I looked up, I almost cried. Not because I missed the outside, but because I realized I didn't remember what clouds looked like anymore. Conversations with ghosts. At night, ADX becomes louder. You can hear the hum of lights, the distant thud of steel doors, and the whispers of men talking through vents. It's the only communication allowed, the unofficial radio of the damned. We talked about everything, memories, regrets, even the food we missed. Sometimes we just made up stories, anything to feel alive. There was a man 3 cells down who swore he used to be a chef in Chicago. He'd describe meals like poetry. Garlic, butter, lemon, steam, the sound of the pan like music. He hadn't tasted food in years. But in that moment, through that vent, it felt real. The mind starts to slip. By week 3, my mind began to change. I started counting cracks in the wall. I talked to the sink. I laughed at my reflection. Every day blended into the next. No sunrise, no sunset, just a constant gray that bled through time. You lose track of what's real. One day, I swore I heard footsteps in my cell while I was asleep. I woke up sweating, heart pounding. But there was no one there. Just the camera lens, staring. It's like living in a coffin with Wi-Fi, you're alive, but only so the system can prove it. The letter. Then came the letter, the first one I'd received in months. It was from my sister. Her handwriting shaky, her words short. You have to stay alive. Don't let them erase you. I read that line over and over until the ink faded from my fingertips. For the first time in weeks, I remembered who I was, not an inmate, not a number, but someone who mattered to someone else. That letter became my weapon. Not against guards. Against despair. The men who don't survive. Not everyone makes it through the first year at ADX. Some stop eating. Some stop talking. Some stop existing even before death. According to reports, suicides are rare, not because they don't happen, but because everything inside is built to prevent it. No hooks, no sheets, no privacy. Even despair is monitored. Still, it finds ways. I heard about one man who bit through his wrist just to feel something real. Another who used his food tray to carve prayers into his chest. And every time something like that happened, the place went quieter, as if the building itself was absorbing it. Learning to breathe again. After months of monotony, something changed. They told me I might qualify for the step-down program, a slow reintegration where you get limited contact, small privileges, maybe even a group session. But I wasn't ready. I'd forgotten how to be around people. The thought of another person's eyes felt terrifying. That's when I realized ADX doesn't just confine you, it rewires you. You don't think like a human anymore. You think like a prisoner of silence. And when silence becomes your language, you stop fearing it. You start to depend on it. The monster in the mirror. One morning, the mirror above my sink caught my eye. For the first time in months, I looked, really looked. The face staring back wasn't mine. It was pale, hollow, expressionless. The eyes were empty but calm, the kind of calm that comes when you've accepted the storm. And then I understood something I never had before. ADX Florence wasn't built to punish us. It was built to erase us, slowly, methodically, permanently. But I had survived. And in this place, survival isn't rebellion. It's the only form of victory left. The men who control the monsters. Inside ADX Florence, power doesn't wear a badge, it wears silence. The guards, the wardens, the psychologists, they all serve a system designed not just to confine, but to erase. And those who control it understand something most people never will. In a place where everyone is dangerous, control must be invisible. The wardens of the machine. The first time I saw the warden, he didn't look like the devil people described. He was calm, polite, too polite. He stood in the observation corridor behind bulletproof glass, arms crossed, studying us like lab subjects. "We don't punish here," he said once during orientation. "We correct." But you could tell he didn't believe that. Nobody who's worked here long enough does. ADX doesn't rely on violence. It relies on psychology. Every routine, every design choice, every inch of this place is meant to make you obey yourself. Because when you control a man's environment, you don't need to control his actions, you own his thoughts. Wardens rotate every few years, but the system stays the same. One of them, an older man known among staff as the architect, was rumored to have helped design the behavioral programs. He once said during a press interview, "ADX isn't built to punish. It's built to prevent chaos." But chaos has a way of adapting, even inside perfection. The psychology of obedience. Every inmate at ADX is assigned a mental health file, a running log of behavior, responses, and stress reactions. If you pace too long, they note it. If you sleep too much, they note that too. They know your patterns better than you do. I once asked a guard, "Why do you watch us even when we're not doing anything?" He didn't hesitate. Because that's when you're planning something. But the truth? We weren't planning anything. We were trying not to disappear. The psychiatrists visit once a month, sometimes once every 2. They stand behind the glass, ask you how you're feeling, mark your answer, and leave. It's less about helping you, more about proving the system works. One day, one of them slipped and said, "You're one of the calm ones." That's good. The angry ones don't last long here. I realized then that calm didn't mean healthy. It meant broken in. The code of the guards. Most guards here are military veterans. Their movements are rehearsed, precise, controlled, emotionless. They never shout. They never joke. They don't need to. They have a rule: no names. No stories. No familiarity. You're not a person, you're an assignment. Every shift, they perform check counts, walking past cells, confirming movement. They don't look at you directly. Their eyes stay on the clipboard or the monitor. But sometimes, when the cameras weren't watching, 1 or 2 would glance in, quick, almost guilty. And for a split second, you'd see it, the exhaustion, the fear. Because make no mistake, ADX doesn't just break inmates. It breaks guards too. A former officer later told the Denver Post. You start hearing the silence even when you're home. You check corners that don't exist. You don't sleep well for years. That's the cost of controlling monsters, the fear that someday, you'll start to become one. The invisible hierarchy. You'd think there's no hierarchy in a place like this, everyone locked, isolated, stripped of status. But inside ADX, power takes different shapes. There's the warden, who controls the big picture. The lieutenants, who handle discipline and communication. The intelligence officers, who monitor coded mail, body language, and hidden signals. And then there's the unofficial hierarchy, the invisible order of fear. Certain inmates are treated with extra caution. Not because they can escape, but because they can influence. A single coded letter, a hidden word, a phrase in a prayer, that's all it takes to send a message beyond the walls. I remember one case vividly. A man in another unit had been writing letters in a language none of the guards understood. Weeks later, federal agents arrived and took him away. Rumor said his letters had reached overseas, carrying information hidden in religious texts. After that, all foreign correspondence was screened by an algorithm. If too many unusual phrases appeared, the inmate was placed on communication restriction, meaning no letters, no calls, no contact at all. That's how tight the control is. Even words can get you locked in deeper darkness. The shadow network. For years, inmates have whispered about a secret wing, deeper than H Unit, known only by rumor as E Block. No public record confirms it exists, but the stories are always the same. It's where they keep those the government can't afford to release, not even in death. They say it's underground. No windows. No light. Complete silence. One former guard who left the bureau mentioned it once, anonymously. You think ADX is the bottom? There's something below it. You don't talk about those prisoners. Maybe it's just rumor. Maybe it's real. But in Florence, truth doesn't matter as much as belief, and belief can drive men mad. The cost of control. In 2015, the Bureau of Prisons quietly began rotating staff every 6 months. They called it preventive mental health management. In reality, too many guards were burning out. Some turned to alcohol. Some resigned mid-shift, refusing to ever walk those halls again. But for those who stayed, they learned the rhythm of the place. Wake. Lock. Feed. Watch. Repeat. I once overheard a younger officer whisper to another. It's weird, man. You can feel the building watching you. And I understood exactly what he meant. ADX isn't just walls and cameras. It's an ecosystem, an organism that feeds on control. Everyone here, inmate or officer, becomes part of its nervous system. You stop being human. You become necessary. The test of loyalty. One winter morning, they tested the alarm system. The sirens wailed through concrete halls, sharp, piercing, endless. Cells shook. Lights flickered. For a few seconds, I thought it was real. When it stopped, a voice came over the speakers. System check complete. All secure. But afterward, something strange happened. Every guard walked a little faster. Every inmate went a little quieter. Even fake chaos leaves a scar. Later that night, I realized what those drills were for, not for safety, but for conditioning. They trained everyone to obey instinctively, to respond like parts of a single machine. ADX doesn't need guards with guns or inmates with weapons. It just needs everyone to follow the same rhythm, the rhythm of absolute control. The unseen puppet masters. Behind the scenes, far from Colorado, lies the real power, Washington. The Bureau of Prisons, the Justice Department, the courts, all pulling invisible strings. Every transfer, every restriction, every decision about who gets sunlight or who stays in the dark, all approved by people who will never step foot inside the place they control. In a 2017 hearing before Congress, a former Bureau official was asked if ADX's isolation policy violated human rights. He paused, then said, "Safety has no price. We cannot allow sympathy to compromise security." Those words haunted me. Because in that sentence, humanity died quietly. The cracks in authority. No system is perfect. And sometimes, even ADX slips. One year, an inmate managed to smuggle out a handwritten manifesto, mailed through a third party, hidden between legal papers. When it surfaced online, the government panicked. The text wasn't violent. It wasn't even angry. It simply described life inside ADX in haunting, poetic detail. It ended with one line. "We are the shadows that justice forgot." After that, mail screenings doubled, and dozens of inmates lost privileges. But you can't censor a ghost, and by then, ADX had created hundreds. A fragile balance. There's something almost sacred about the control in this place. The guards believe in it. The administrators worship it. And the inmates, even the most dangerous, respect it. Because here, control is the only thing separating order from chaos. But the truth is, the system is fragile. All it takes is one mistake, one door left unlatched, one human error, and the balance collapses. And that's the fear that keeps everyone awake at night. Not the inmates escaping, but the system failing itself. The moment of realization. It took me years to understand what ADX truly is. It's not a prison. It's a reflection of the people who built it, a mirror showing what fear can make us become. The men who control the monsters have built something worse than evil, order without mercy. And deep down, I think they know it. Because every time they look into the cells, they're staring into their own creation, and realizing it's staring back. Freedom is just another cell. No one ever really leaves ADX Florence. You walk out of its gates, maybe, but it doesn't walk out of you. The silence follows you like a shadow, and every door you see afterward reminds you of the ones that never opened. When my release day came, it didn't feel real. After years inside the world's toughest prison, I thought I'd feel joy. Instead, I felt nothing. Like a ghost walking through air that no longer belonged to me. The last morning. They woke me up early. 4 a.m. sharp. No warning, no words, just the sudden blare of fluorescent light and a guard's flat voice. "Pack up. It's time." Time. That word hadn't meant anything for years. Inside ADX, time doesn't move. It just circles around you like an invisible predator. I folded what little I had, a Bible, a toothbrush, a few letters, and slid them into a plastic bag. A guard cuffed me, another clipped on the waist chain, and we began the long walk out. Corridor after corridor, gate after gate. Every clang echoed like a heartbeat I hadn't felt in years. I'd walked those halls hundreds of times in shackles, but this time, it was different. This time, the doors were opening for me. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Because in ADX, they always are. The exit process. Before any inmate leaves, there's a final psychological evaluation. A sterile room. A chair. A clipboard. And a woman in a gray suit with eyes that never blink too long. She asked the same questions they always do. Do you understand where you are? Do you feel remorse? Do you believe you can live safely among others? I said yes to all of them. Because the truth is, none of those questions matter. They don't want honesty, they want compliance. When the evaluation ended, she looked at me and said, "You've done your time. You can start again." But I knew better. You can't start again when you've already been erased. The outside world. The first thing that hit me when I stepped outside wasn't the air, it was sound. Cars, wind, voices, birds, all crashing into my head like a tidal wave. For years, I'd lived in silence so thick it felt physical. Now, every noise was an explosion. The sky looked fake. Too wide. Too bright. Too unreal. For a second, I wanted to run back inside, back to the darkness I understood. A halfway house took me in. They called it transition housing, but it felt like another kind of cage, just one with softer walls. People there walked around like they were free, but every night they locked the doors, just like in ADX. Freedom had rules. Curfews. Tests. Supervision. One counselor asked me once, "What's the hardest part of being out?" I told him, "Remembering how to be human." He didn't have an answer. The ghosts of Florence. You don't forget the faces. Even if you never saw them directly, you remember their sounds, the tapping through walls, the whispers through vents, the prayers, the screams. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear it. Tap. 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 3 short, 1 long, the same Morse code that once meant H. I wonder what happened to those men. Some are still there. Some probably never made it out. And some, maybe, still tap in the dark, waiting for a reply that never comes. One night, I dreamed of the cell. It wasn't cold anymore. It wasn't dark. It was quiet, too quiet. When I woke up, I was sitting on my bed, staring at a wall that wasn't there. That's when I realized. ADX doesn't end at the gates. It builds a copy of itself in your mind, and you carry it everywhere you go. The world doesn't understand. People always ask the same questions. What was it really like in there? Was it as bad as they say? Did you meet terrorists? Killers? They expect horror stories, beatings, riots, shanks. But that's not what kills you. What kills you is nothingness. The absence of sound, the absence of touch, the absence of life. It's not pain. It's emptiness. And emptiness is harder to survive than pain. I once told a reporter, "You don't serve time in ADX. Time serves you, piece by piece, until there's nothing left." They published it in a small magazine. Most people ignored it. Because truth isn't dramatic enough when it's quiet. The system never lets go. Even after release, the Bureau of Prisons still monitors you. Letters are screened. Calls are recorded. Every move you make, tracked. You might be outside, but you're still part of their system. They call it post-release supervision. I call it ADX without walls. When you've spent years living by a routine, you start to crave it. Wake up at 6. Eat at 7. Wait at 8. Out here, there are no walls, but no structure either. Freedom feels like falling. And the worst part? You start to miss the order. You start to miss the silence. The day I went back. A few months after release, I made a mistake. Not a crime, just a visit. I rented a car and drove back toward Florence. I parked miles away, on a dirt road that overlooks the prison complex. It looked smaller than I remembered. A gray cube surrounded by fences and dust. But as the sun set, those floodlights flickered on, outlining the same geometry of fear I'd lived inside for years. And for the first time since my release, I cried. Not because of what happened to me there. But because I realized, part of me still belonged to it. Florence had become my identity. Without it, I was nothing but a name on paper. The letter to the system. Months later, I wrote a letter. Not to anyone inside. Not to the guards, or the warden, or even my family. I wrote it to the building itself. You won, I wrote. But only because you taught me how to survive your silence. I am not afraid of you anymore. You built me in your image, but I learned to breathe in your darkness. I never mailed it. I burned it. The ash floated up, disappeared into the wind, the first real freedom I'd felt in years. The truth about survival. People think surviving ADX means you're strong. It doesn't. It means you learned how to die slowly, and stay aware while doing it. But in that awareness, something powerful happens. You start to see life differently. You start to realize that freedom isn't space, it's choice. And choice, even inside a cage, is something they can never take. That's the paradox of Florence. It destroys everything except the part of you that refuses to die. And that small part, that ember of will, becomes your entire identity. The last reflection. Years later, I still wake up before dawn. I still count cracks in the ceiling. I still flinch when doors slam. But I'm not inside anymore. I tell myself that every morning, you're free now. And yet, every time I close my eyes, I see it. The long corridor, the silent guards, the red light above the steel door. And I hear the same voice that welcomed me in. Welcome to Florence. You won't like it here. He was right. But he forgot one thing. You can survive Florence. You just can't ever leave it. Because once you've lived inside the world's toughest prison, it keeps living inside you.